Here we go. Good afternoon, everyone. I keep saying good morning. It's 2 o'clock. It's the afternoon, so good afternoon. I hope everyone survived the storm okay last night. That was pretty wild. We've got some pretty significant hail damage at our garden. We have a little organic garden at the end of the road, so my mom just texted me that our garden was damaged. So I hope we're the only ones and no one else has that issue. Quite the wild ride last night. So with that storm. So I hope everyone's hanging in there and get to enjoy the rest of your Labor Day weekend. And we thank our brothers and sisters and siblings in the labor movement from, back in the original labor movement till now. I'm really proud that our campaign has been endorsed by many different labor unions, and really proud to stand with those folks. So we have them to thank for Labor Day and this extended weekend. So hello, everyone that's joining. Awesome. You guys know the drill. If I can't see you, if you don't put a comment, then I can't see that you're watching, so you know the drill. Please comment. We've got a couple different topics up today, kind of back to school stuff and higher education. So we'll start with a couple different updates first. We'll go with our COVID update. So as of this morning, a little bit ago, we checked, and hey, good to see you, Sally, Phil, Brian, Eric, Nancy, hey, everyone. So as of an hour ago, we were up to 1,172 confirmed cases in Carver County. And that's, I believe, 10 more than the last time I checked, a couple days ago. Unfortunately, we did have one more death in our county. I was on the phone yesterday with a couple different folks, and hey, Tracy, and one particular person I talked to, I struggled a lot to connect with this person, which is not normal for me. Usually we can find something that we connect on, even if we disagree on everything in politics. And that person, it said, the deaths were so small and that didn't matter. And so we should open everything back up and have no restrictions. I understand, it's an overwhelming majority of folks that just want to get back to their normal, everyday lives and want to see their grandkids and travel and, go do all the fun things like normal, which, you can still do. There's just a few restrictions around some things. But to hear someone say that, 5 deaths is not enough to be concerned, I just have to strongly, strongly, strongly disagree. 1 death. One person getting sick, that's enough of a cause for concern for me. So my heart goes out to everyone that's been affected by this virus, whether, firsthand or not. Everyone knows somebody that knows somebody that's been affected by it, or if you don't, you're in the lucky few. We've had some of our volunteers, even some of our, my family members, friends, and that have been infected. So this is still very much an emergency, and the fact that we've had one more death here in our community just breaks my heart. So my heart goes out to everyone who's been affected by that, and it's a good chance to pause and just remind everyone that masking will make a difference, and even if you don't believe in it, it's a really good indicator to others that you care about them and you care about, your server at the restaurant that you're going to, or the cashier at Target, or whatever. It's just a nice signal to them that you care about their well-being as well. The very few events that I have participated in person have all been outdoors and masked, and they've been wonderful. So thank you to those who are keeping that in mind and being considerate. My brother actually just ran over to Target to grab a few things, and and said that there were a bunch of little kids in there all wearing masks, and the parents were saying, oh, don't touch that. Nope, we're not touching anything. And, he was just, if little kids can wear a mask, everybody can wear a mask. It's easy. It's an easy thing to do. And now they're becoming an accessory, which is my favorite thing. At one of the events, a young woman and I complimented each other on our masks. Like, oh, that's cool. That matches your outfit. Oh, that's cool. That's a fun pattern, whatever. So I have a one mask with corgis on it, and they're all wearing bandanas that say vote. So if you see me out, you're probably going to see me wearing that one. We got a comment. People keep forgetting that this is 8 times more deadly than the flu. Yeah, it is. I mean, that's been part of the pushback, the false narrative that unfortunately our current senator is pushing, that the facts are wrong and that people are inflating the data, and that's just not true. I don't know what to say. It's just not true. So it is 8 to 10 times more deadly than the flu, and there are lingering effects on on cardiac issues as well. Just like you said, Eric, that's a really good point. My father had triple bypass surgery a couple years ago. It was a shock to all of us that he needed that, and I'll tell you guys that story another day. But we've become significantly more, and his doctors have become significantly more worried about him as well, getting it. We thought my mom was the one we had to really worry about, but with these, heart functionalities that are being affected long term with this virus, it's a concern. It's a huge concern. And Tracy, you're right. We all have to pitch in. We have all got to do our part. Every single one. I mean, for the CDC and the World Health Organization to say, if we all wore masks, the U.S. could get this under control in 4 to 6 weeks. What more do you need to know? Let's do it. Let's give it a whirl. So I don't know. Again, I'm just going to keep repeating what Dr. Fauci said. Like, I don't know how to tell you that you need to care about other people. You just do. You just do. We're all in a society and a community together. And I know that we do care about each other. I've seen Carver County. I've seen our neighbors show up time after time after time again for their neighbors. And this is another opportunity where we get to do that. We get to demonstrate to our community members that we care about them. And that's cool. I mean, we're in an unfortunate, really dire situation that we have to be in to demonstrate that. But here we are. So let's get through it the best we can. Statewide, we're at 80,587 confirmed cases and 1,857 deaths. That is 1,857 families that have lost a loved one to this. And that's just heart-wrenching to me. Yeah, Tracy, I agree. Science and facts are cool. I love science. I'm a big nerd. I love science. And Dr. Fauci is an American hero. I might get one of those t-shirts that say Fauci on them. Love him. So there has been a huge spike nationwide and in this state of college-age kids, or people, I shouldn't say kids, they're not kids, college-age students getting this virus and spreading the infection. And you see hotspots at like University of Dayton had a huge hotspot. You're going to see a lot of that with colleges reopening. And I was in college. I went to William Woods University in Fulton, Missouri, and I was in a sorority, and we had recruitment. Rush is what they call recruitment. And, all kinds of fun activities. I remember that. I remember going back and being so excited to see your friends. But we have to, and parents, we have to also do the same thing to remind our students this is still very much an issue. And our age group, well, their age group, 18 to 25, are the ones that are, getting it and spreading it quicker than any other age group at the moment. So Governor Walz and Commissioner Malcolm just did a press conference, campaign lingo, presser, I think last week, a couple days ago maybe, about the need to continue to mask, wash your hands, stay, now they're saying further away, 6 to 20 feet away from others. And of course the risk is a little bit less outside, but still continuing to take those precautionary steps is going to be even more important now that we're starting to open things back up. Colleges are starting to open up. Schools, K through 12 schools are starting to open back up. So we have got to keep reminding each other. This hasn't gone away. Just because we're bored with it or we're tired of it, it doesn't mean it has gone away. It's gotten worse, in my opinion. So, all right. A couple comments here. Yeah. Can't help but think because Minnesota is divided between presidential candidates, is this why we can't get this under control? Joanne, I think you're right. This has turned so political, and it's crazy. It's just insane to me. I tweeted the other day something that Andy Slavitt from, I think he's in the district next door, a health professional that's nationally recognized, said, if candidates are not masking and they're out and they're holding events, like you have to ask yourself as a voter, is that candidate putting your vote over your life? Like your vote for them matters more than your life. And that's why we're not door knocking. That's why it's so important to get on the phones and write postcards and, write letters to the editor, whatever you got to do, because we are not door knocking. And, turning this into a political thing has been a really horrible side effect of this. So yeah, I agree with you, Joanne. I think you're right. Sad and frustrating that the mask issue has become political. I'm struggling to understand, if our president has been wearing a mask, which he has in a couple different occasions, and obviously the governor does, and leadership in all corners of the state has been masking up. I struggle to understand the need to not do it to prove a point or something. I'm not really sure. And I watched a documentary the other day. Sorry, I'm going off topic here a little bit, but about when seatbelts came out. That was a huge thing. Nobody wanted to wear a seatbelt. It was against their rights and their liberties. Nobody wanted to wear a seatbelt, despite it being, scientifically proven. The data was there that it reduced fatalities in the event of a crash. Now, I grew up, that was what you did. You got in the car, you buckled your seatbelt. My mom wouldn't start the car until we buckled our seatbelts, that's just a standard thing now. But back in the day when this first started with seatbelts, there was some pushback there too. So I'm hoping that if this virus lasts that long, that we are going to, be able to accept it the way we have seatbelts. So I think there's like one state, I'm pretty sure it's New Hampshire, where where you're allowed to not wear a seatbelt. But David, those numbers are an undercount. I'm convinced David, I'm so sorry to hear that. He tested negative and his family had all the symptoms. Yeah, there has been some, false negatives in the testing. The testing is new, and like any new kind of test or treatment, it's not always right. And yeah, I'm so sorry to hear that. God, that just breaks my heart. Excess death statistics show the real number is probably about 25% higher than what they're reporting. So I did a town hall a little bit on this quite a while ago. I'll have to go back and rewatch it again to get the correct numbers at that time and compare it to now. But yeah, this false narrative that folks are pushing that it's not as bad as the flu, and I just want someone to explain what they can't do that they want to be able to do. Like, you can still go to church, you can still go to a bar and a restaurant, you can still go, to a movie, like you can still do pretty much everything. You just have to be a little bit more careful. I don't know. I don't see the problem with that, but that's just me. I just really, really love this community, and I really love just humans in general, and I just wouldn't want to get anyone sick and keep spreading this. So we border states that are lax in restrictions. Like Governor Walz said, it's like 50 different countries. Yes, absolutely. You're totally right. In one of my conversations this week too, I spoke with a gentleman who had a lot of questions for me. It was really fun, actually. And we talked about that. We said, Governor Walz Minnesota is one of 49 states that has a peacetime emergency. And, the president declared a peacetime emergency as well. So there's just one state that disagrees. So you have 49 governors and the president that agree on something. When was the last time that ever happened? Never. So to say that we should join the one other state that disagrees and just open everything back up, I have in my notes, we'll get to that in a little bit, about why that's a bad idea. But yeah, so odd how most other countries have gotten this under control with simple changes like masks and social distancing, but we just can't. Yeah. And I watched a little video about this as well, that Americans have such a sense of self safety and our rights and our freedoms and our liberties. We take that very seriously. Unfortunately, that's gone in the direction where that's not helpful in this case. And you don't really have that in other countries. And I'm happy to send you the video if I can find it again, Tony. That's a great note. All right, so we'll touch on school reopenings, and then we'll go back to the governor's peacetime emergency. So school reopenings, MDE, the Department of Education here in Minnesota, has established regional support teams throughout the state. So when these, we're going to see spikes and drops in cases, and the things are going to change. And I've met with a couple different school board members and superintendents over the past week and a half. All of them have overwhelmingly said, student and staff safety is priority. So they're having, measures in place to try to reduce the spread and keep everybody safe. There's online learning options for parents who don't want to send their kids back to school in person. Sorry, my assistant here is joining me. And I will make another plug for the online learning academies that our schools are offering. Remember that your students per pupil funding follows the school. So if you enroll them in an online learning institution that is statewide or nationwide, that's going to go to them and not to your local school. So Eastern Carver County Schools has a really phenomenal online learning program taught by teachers that are already in the district. So please consider enrolling your kids in that if you are keeping them home, if you haven't done so already. Yeah, this is great. The regional support team was a little, right when the announcement came out, they kind of had to scramble to get that established. They're pretty well established now. They've got great working relationships with our schools in this district. And you're going to see a little bit of a difference between, you know, somewhat like Eastern Carver County schools versus Cologne Academy, or versus, you know, even Watertown Mayor, things like that. The MD regional support team is there to help with those transitions and those differences. And then if there is a confirmed case, they know how to handle that, and they're in really close contact with administration. And that's going to be an ongoing thing. You know, they're going to be checking and looking at the data every single day, and things might change day to day. Overwhelmingly, I will say too that despite disagreements on reopening or how things should go, or if parents are sending their kids back to school or not, hybrid models, all that stuff, despite all the craziness, all the uncertainty, the call for handling this with grace has been met and matched. And parents have been graceful with each other, with themselves, students, same thing, teachers, same thing. Everyone is just concerned about safety. Of course, everyone, you know, wants to get the kids back to school when it's safe. And we know that having those younger learners in person is necessary for growth and development. Safety is still going to be coming first. So that's just been really heartwarming to see. Even folks disagreeing online, they're still doing so with grace and understanding of each other, just like this community has always done. So I love to see it. And I know that the administration and the superintendents and teachers, they appreciate that too. I mean, we all just want to do what's best for the kids, right? And we're already facing some pretty significant cuts due to, you know, the failure of the referendum on the Eastern Carver County school side, and the operating and statutory debt, unfortunately, with the Waconia School District. So this is tough. This is really, really tough. And I applaud everyone who's going through this decision and trying to do the best research they can, and you know, making these decisions. It's tough. And I keep saying you guys are literally building the plane as you're flying it, and that's tough. It's really, there's no handbook for this stuff. So I'm glad that we have that regional support team with the Department of Education to help us through. And they have a great working relationship with our administrations. How do we figure out the numbers when the hybrid model comes into play? That is a really good question, and I wish I knew the exact answer for you. I don't, but I can try to find it and check back in with you. My guess is that would be something that regional support team would know, and that they would be forthcoming, that the districts would be forthcoming with that as well. And I think you're on the Eastern Carver County school side, so you're going to trend more towards like the Hennepin, the heavier numbers in Carver rather than like Norwood. They can trend on the lower side. So 10 cases per day in Carver right now. Does that have to move to 15 per day to go to hybrid? I think it does. Yeah, sorry. I wish I knew a little bit more about it to be able to speak appropriately to it. But yeah, I do know it's going to be a very fluid thing. And if they do need to change and go to, distance learning, 100% distance learning, they have the ability to do that quickly, which is great. I think they'll be a little slower to move the opposite direction. Bottom line is we're going to really need to get it together in order to get to fully opening the state again. I don't know what else to say about that. There has been a couple questions that have come in about childcare. So if we don't have, full-time in-person learning and parents have to work and be out of the home, what do we do? There's a childcare aware referral line, and I will put the number in the comments right now. Childcare aware referral line, and it is 1-888-291-9811. That is in the chat there for you guys. So if you are an essential worker or not, really, you can still call that number. There's some assistance programs available as well, but that will tell you, childcare that's still open and functioning in the area, and where you can get a hold of folks there to send your kids to a childcare program. So give that a call if that's something that you are in need of. That's definitely, you're not the only one. That's a very frequent request that's been coming in, both in my official capacity at work and during this campaign. It's a really tough situation to be in. There is also the Federal Families First Coronavirus Response Act, and that just means that certain employers must provide paid sick time, sick leave, or paid, expanded family and medical leave during a time of COVID-19 infection, or you're taking care of someone in your family who has that. So that is available as well through the federal government because of the peacetime emergency that's been declared. All right, I touched on that. So let's switch to the Capitol update, and then we'll go back to the campaign, and then we'll get to our topic of the day. So Capitol update, there is a potential for a special session happening about, the 11th, 12th, 13th, somewhere in there. So the governor may call. We are kind of predicting that he will call for a special session. Again, we're just going to have the same argument about ending the peacetime emergency and those powers. There is potential for some legislation around different funding mechanisms with the federal government and unemployment. Other than that, I'm not exactly sure what is supposed to be on the docket going ahead. I know what the higher ed team is working on, and I'll touch on that in our topic of the day in a little bit. I'm not working with the environment committee right now. They've kind of consolidated that role. So yeah, it's going to be a short special session would be my guess, if he does call us back in. So we'll know a little bit more about that at the end of this week. So to touch on what we would lose if we were to say, yep, let's end the peacetime emergency and revoke all of the executive orders under that peacetime emergency. We would lose the use of the National Guard in testing in long-term care facilities, which is what they are doing right now. Of course, we can still call them up anytime we need for any kind of emergency, like a riot or something happening. But using the National Guard to help with testing is what we need them to do right now, and we would lose that ability. There's a moratorium on housing evictions, so if we were to end that with no plan in place and no assistance for landlords and tenants, we're going to have an epidemic of homelessness. There are a lot of people that are depending on that right now, and there's no plan in place for that backup yet, so we can't end that peacetime emergency, that executive order right now. We have the ability to quickly source and purchase PPE and medical supplies. So say we get a big spike like we're seeing, and we all of a sudden need more PPE for frontline workers, teachers, any essential worker, basically. The legislature is intentionally slow. It was set up to be cumbersome and tough and slow. And if we were in a position where the legislature would need to engage in some type of bidding model for PPE, and we didn't have the rapid response that we have with the governor's team and having this peacetime emergency, we would lose that. And I guarantee you that would not end well for us. So we want to avoid that while this is still a peacetime emergency. Healthcare providers are currently allowed to provide across state lines. So if you had a college student that went to college in Madison and they were enrolled in some or involved in some type of mental health services, or even telehealth services, they can still call into and they live here. They can still call into UW-Madison or vice versa. They're living at home. You can still call in here and get that care that you need as a student and as a patient. That's an exception that we've made, that the state has made under this peacetime emergency. So if that goes away, now you've got telehealth that can't happen, and you've got nurses and doctors that have come here to help us out, work across state lines, and they are not allowed to do that anymore. Okay, last one. I mean, there's several, but these are like the main ones that I think affect this district as much. Is there's an exception right now for ag transportation. To allow drivers to drive a little bit longer and a little bit further to get to where they need to go. Our farmers are really struggling, really struggling right now. So we need to, keep those in mind and allow that exception to continue on for a little bit longer. So if we end the peacetime emergency, we revoke all the executive order powers or executive order measurements, we lose all of that, and we are back to a divided government that has proven that it's really difficult to get anything done. We don't have a bonding bill because we have a divided government, and there's a lot of rhetoric and infighting around this. So imagine that fight on a grander scale of trying to address the homelessness crisis that we would face if we ended the moratorium on evictions. It's going to result in a lot of bad things. So I'm fully on board with having the conversation of ending the peacetime emergency if cases fall below a certain number, whatever that may be, a manageable number. Senator Little had a great amendment, and he just put 200 cases a day, just as a starting point to start the conversation, and it was, of course, voted down very quickly. And secondly, if we have a plan in place, and I know that there's a lot of misinformation out there that the governor is making all these decisions and the legislature, they're not doing their job. I can tell you they are, because I work there. And I know, what the representatives that I work for have been doing. The governor's team has done a really great job of outreach and trying to get people to the table still during this interim. Election season's coming up, and there's people that are ignoring their campaigns in order to get this work done. And that's what needs to be done, in certain cases. So there was a couple interesting letters between the Senate Majority Leader and the governor and his team that, I would just recommend you go read them. There's limits to what I can say because of my job, but I would just recommend you go read those letters and just know that there is work happening, that the governor and the legislature are working. There are certain people in the legislature and in politics that are trying to make people believe that that's not the case, and they're trying to do so before their elections. So it doesn't look bad on them that they haven't done anything and they have nothing to prove for the 2 years in power. And they're trying to use it as a wedge to divide us. And we can't let that happen, right? We have to be smarter than that, which I know Carver County is, and we have to be braver than that. We have to know, that's not, you're not showing up to the meetings. That's why the work isn't getting done. It's not because of this peacetime emergency. All right. Too many people are using this as a political pawn, such as our current state senator. Yeah. Again, there's limits to what I can say because of my job, but I will definitely agree with that. It's been really frustrating as someone who works in the legislature to see that happen and know what's really going on, and know that, people are choosing not to show up to meetings, and that's why the work's not getting done. So I am a workaholic, and I love working, and I love my job. I am not one that requires a lot of sleep, and I like to get up early in the morning. I'm a 5 a.m. rise, let's go kind of person. So that if I am when I'm elected, I will not let you guys down. I'm not going to not show up to meetings and, try to use things as a political pawn and as a coin and as a wedge to drive people, apart from each other so they'll vote for me the next time around. Absolutely not. That is not my style. I promise I will never do that. Okay, so now that I've gone off the deep end about that, let's go back to a campaign update, a little happier. And there is a comment, we do need to flip the Minnesota State Senate to get some work done. Our current elected officials over there are not cutting it, not doing their jobs, and our tax dollars are paying their salaries. So let's kick those guys out, put some more people back to work who want to do the work. Okay, so campaign update. We had a ton of endorsements come in over the past couple weeks that I'm just thrilled about. So those are going up in different various posts, and we will be putting those on the website as well. What an endorsement means is that either they reached out to me or I reached out to them, organizations or groups, and they had us fill out a questionnaire and typically do a screening as well, so like an interview. I only applied for endorsements where I agree with what they're trying to do. So it wasn't about money, certainly that does help, but it wasn't about that for our campaign. It was just, I closely align with, for example, the Minnesota Farmers Union. I very closely align with their beliefs. So I was able to get their support and work with them as well. And it's nice to establish those relationships ahead of being elected, so you know who to go to and who to communicate with when different various bills come up. So a couple of those that just came out. We have the Minnesota Farmers Union. Very excited about that one. About all of these, really. And then we had the Minnesota Young DFL, so DFLers under 35, which I am. Barely. I'm still 32, but so they've endorsed as well. AFL-CIO is a huge, overarching labor union group. Ranked choice voting gave us the candidate democracy champion distinction. So I do support ranked choice voting. We talked a little bit about that on my town hall with Chair Dean, and happy to go into that too if anyone has questions. And then the Land Stewardship Action Fund. So Land Stewardship Project is a group that formed to expand the attraction of farming and agriculture practices. So they're helping with transitioning, traditional farming to sustainable practices, and making farming more accessible to people of all different, cultural and racial diverse backgrounds, and trying to expand, more agriculture stuff into the cities, and get folks interested in pursuing that kind of career. So very excited to be working with those groups as well. Phone banking. We have a couple phone banks coming up. There's people calling every day, I will say. So if you're interested in helping us win this race, the very number one, very, very, very best thing you can do is get on the phone and call people. Now we can set you up so you have a script, you have a list, we can train you, we can do like role playing with you so and you're confident in what you're doing. There's tough conversations that you have, and there's really overwhelmingly great conversations that you can have as well. So we are doing phone banks all together via Zoom. So it's kind of like we're all in a room together, and then we'll take breaks throughout the night and stuff too. So a couple different 2-hour shifts. You can come for an hour, you can come for the whole thing, you can come for multiple shifts, whatever works for your schedule. That's the very, very best thing, because we're not door knocking, because I'm not super, super well funded by a bunch of like wealthy donors. So I can't, pay to have a TV ad or something. This is the best thing you can do to help us. And our message is resonating. Our message is working with the people of Carver County. They know that this is more hopeful and more optimistic than our opposition would lead you to believe, and that I can get the job done. I know how to do what I need to do to get there. And once I'm there, I know how to operate. And that is working with people. People want change. People want to see someone who's happy to be there and excited about the future of our district, and paying attention to things like healthcare and climate crisis and mental health and criminal justice reform. They want that. And so when we reach out to these folks and we have those one-on-one conversations, we get to talk about that. And that's not something that you typically experience in your day-to-day life here. So I highly recommend you come join us. We've got Nancy putting the volunteer sign up there. Great question, Eric. Who are the calls directed to? So we have a couple different lists, and it's typically, so we have a lot of bad data in this district. So our first round was just trying to ID people, just ID folks that potentially could vote this way or would never vote this way, and kind of separate those two lists out. So we do our very best so you're not having a bad time. I don't want you to call someone who's hostile and angry and going to yell at you and hang up on you. So we do our very best to have that never happen. So most of these conversations will either be with people who are typically going to vote our way, and we just have to remind them to do so, or they're what we call persuadables. So there might be someone who always votes with the candidate. They don't vote with a party. That's my favorite. And so they just need to talk about whatever their issue is that they really care about. Maybe it's farming, and we can talk to them about my positions on farming. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to know where I stand on every single little thing. The volunteers' job is to help us with those IDs, and if there's a further conversation that needs to happen, direct those people so I can call them directly. So my lists are folks that have generally already been contacted or have reached out to be contacted by me. So it's kind of a dual process. But like I said, we want you to have a good time. We want you to not be turned off from this event or this type of work. So we do our very best to make sure that you have good conversations that are fun and helpful. All right. Like Nancy said, we do call Democrats and Republicans. We're going to need both to win this race. And like I said, our message is really resonating with with people of both parties, with people of no party, with people who only vote for the candidate and not the party, or people that only vote for Republicans. I've got Trump supporters that are coming out and supporting this race because they know that I know what I'm doing and I can get the job done. And they're, excited about the message, and they want to send a hometown girl there. They want to send someone who was raised here and has the allegiance to this district and will not give up. So we've got strong DFLers, strong GOP. We've got all kinds of people supporting this race, which is what really makes that phone banking fun. You never know what you're going to get, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun. Text banking with the DFL. Yeah, I will say texting is it's harder for people to be mean to you when you're talking to them on the phone, even more so on the doors. You'll still get a few every now and then. I always say if you get one, during your shift, you're probably doing a great job because you're reaching a lot of people. For every one that I get, I've noticed that I'm getting 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 really good conversations that are really moving the needle. So there's always, trolls or if someone having a bad day or whatever. Yep, that happens. But we'll teach you how to handle that, and we'll teach you how to move on to the next call. Local is kinder. I think so. I mean, I'm biased, obviously. I love it. I love it here. Yeah, and Nancy's amazing, our volunteer coordinator. She will make sure that you are comfortable and confident in what you're doing, and we'll make sure you have a good time while we're still making a big difference. So we've got one coming up today at 4 if anyone wants to join. We've got an event up on the Facebook page, so you can sign up there. And then just keep an eye on our website and our Facebook page. We're going to be putting them up every so often, and sign up for the Zoom link, and we'll send it to you, and then we'll get it done. All right. Talked enough about phone banks. Oh, candidate parades are coming up in different cities. So you'll see different groups of DFLers going around with decorated cars and stuff. So we've got Chaska coming up, Chanhassen, Carver, Victoria. Yeah, and we're doing food drives at the same time. So look for those flyers. There's volunteers distributing flyers with the date and time for those. And yeah, come out and wave and take a picture and donate some food for the food banks. Yes. Okay, and we will be having a couple bigger events that I can't disclose yet, but they have some pretty big ticket folks, guests that are coming on to help us. We've gotten the attention of some pretty big names because of the race that we're running and what we're trying to do here. So we're going to have a couple big events, so keep an eye out on social media for those once we get those dates settled. Last thing I will say on the campaign update is vote by mail. A couple of our team went to a training with Secretary Simon about voting procedures and voting by mail, and he said that there is nothing to be worried about. Don't let the rhetoric in the news, in the media, tell you that you should be really concerned about the mail. If you're voting by mail, you should be confident in that. Secretary Simon, I'm worried, I get it, but Secretary Simon was very adamant that as long as your ballot's postmarked by November 3rd, that you'll be okay. So I will say once you send it back in, you can track it, and you should track it and make sure that it gets there. Secretary of State can help with that. So their website is mnvotes.org. If you haven't registered to vote or requested your ballot, please go do that right now. It's like, go off this page and do it right now. Really, really do it. Tell all your friends and family and neighbors and everyone to do it too. And then you can track it through the website. Our local election office is phenomenal. So they will help you too. If you have any questions, you can call. When you are voting by mail, you can also request your ballot, fill it out, and then you can physically bring it in early. You can bring it in during those early voting hours that start on September 18th. You can also call ahead to the Carver County Election Office and set up a time for them to come out to your car, and they have to bring staff out to validate who you are and that you dropped it off and all that. So just call ahead if that's something you're interested in doing. And then you can also, of course, vote on Election Day. Just be very careful with masks and social distancing. Yay, Eric's gonna help call. All right. We moved to Carver County 2 years ago. Welcome. I hope you love it as much as I do. Absentee voted this summer. It was easy peasy and COVID safe. Yes, love to hear it. Yep, it is easy. Just make sure that you are using the same number to request your ballot that you do to send in your ballot. I have heard from some folks that made that mistake and used their driver's license on one and their social security on another, and it didn't count. So, but the tracking is available for that very purpose. So, okay, so let's switch to our topic of the day with our last 20 minutes. And I could talk for hours about this because it's what I do for a living. So we're going to talk about higher ed in Minnesota today. So higher education is the committee that I work on, or work for. So we're out of order here. So I work currently for the chair of the higher education committee, who is Connie Bernardi from Fridley. And I was the committee administrator. I'm now a committee legislative assistant. There was a little change in, they needed me to fill a position for the session, and now I'm back to my normal position. But it's very complicated. And when the speaker called and said, we're going to put you on higher ed, and you're going to get to do this, this, and this, I was like, I don't know if I'm really, I didn't go to college here. I went to college in Missouri. I don't know if I'll know enough, and I have grown to love it. I really want to be on the higher education committee when I get to the Senate. That's a great idea too, Nancy, putting both your driver's license number and social security number. Yeah. So I've really grown to love it. It's very, very complicated. I will say the funding mechanisms were incredible. I still have a lot to learn, and thank goodness we have such great nonpartisan fiscal staff at the legislature that just know this stuff front to back, and they really know what they're talking about. They were essential to my learning. So the stakeholders, when you're talking about higher education, the stakeholders, we've got the Office of Higher Education, which is a Minnesota agency. And Commissioner Olson, Dennis Olson, was confirmed, so he is not at risk, thank goodness, because he's like one of the most wonderful people I've ever met. He comes from a tribal relations background, and did a lot of really good work in tribal outreach and getting that written into our laws. I'm a huge fan of Dennis Olson. So you have Office of Higher Education, you have the University of Minnesota, which very interesting is not bound by our statutes. They have constitutional autonomy. So they were actually founded before our Minnesota Constitution was able to write them in. So they have constitutional autonomy. So you'll notice if you ever look at the statutes, you see, Minnesota state colleges and universities. So your Mankato and your tribal colleges, all of that, may or must. And then you'll see the university should or may. We can't dictate that they have to do anything as a legislature. So that's an interesting intersection and just a funny note of like how you have to write the legislation. Like I said, Minnesota state colleges and universities, that does include the tribal colleges in that. You have the Minnesota private colleges and universities. I'm trying to see if I had it in my notes. There we go. Yeah. Okay. So the private colleges and universities, so that's your St. Olaf, St. Thomas, Benny's, Johnny's, all that. Augsburg's in there. And then you've got your your for-profits, which is a significantly smaller number. A bad example of a for-profit university is Argosy. And I've talked a lot about that, and I still feel very strongly about Argosy University and the legislation we have to do to prevent that situation from happening again. A good example of a for-profit is Rasmussen. They are a for-profit that fills a very specific need in our workforce here. So there is an avenue for for-profits to exist and be helpful. And Rasmussen is like the golden standard of those in the state. So when you're talking about funding, there's Tracy and Nancy are putting really good notes in the chat or in the comments about voting and resources and things. So please go check that out too. So we're talking about funding. Everyone's familiar with tuition, right? And the state can fund what's called tuition freezes. So we can say, the colleges and universities are not going to raise tuition because the state is going to fund that. So our students won't be affected by any tuition raises. There's also tuition caps. So this past year, or 2019 year, the House bill had a tuition freeze, statewide tuition freeze. That was resoundingly voted down by the Senate Higher Education Committee. They wanted a 1% tuition cap so that colleges and universities weren't allowed to raise their tuition more than 1% over the next 2 years. Not that much. So we landed on a 3% cap, which was an unfortunate compromise we had to make, but we had to get the bill done, so that's what we did. So you also have loans, federal and state loans, and then you have grants, federal and state grants. And Minnesota's got some really phenomenal state grant programs that I had the pleasure of working on. We have a really good history. The Office of Higher Education has a really good history of being helpful in that department. Okay, so we've got about 421,732 students enrolled in public and private institutions. And the problem with that number is that was as of fall of 2017. Part of what the challenges with the finance piece of higher education is that the data is 2 years old, almost always 2 years old. And we pushed really hard in 2020 to get that to change. So we have an updated fiscal report from every school every year. The Senate didn't agree to that for some reason. So as of not too long ago, of course, with COVID, all of the colleges and universities are facing pretty significant deficits in enrollment, in tuition. The university can't, they don't have sports happening, and that sports revenue is gone, or significantly lower, and it's really tough. So We don't know the full picture of what fall semester is going to look like yet, but Minnesota State reports a system-wide enrollment decline of 6% on average, and the U of M is declining at least 7% on their Twin Cities campuses. Now they do have 6 other campuses as well, or I'm sorry, 4 other campuses as well. Your average tuition for a full-time resident in 2019 and 20 is $15,000 at the U of M, $8,000 at the four-year state university colleges, $5,000 at the 2 years, and then about $35,000 at the private 4 years. That's a lot of money. So I know that folks, typically when we have these conversations on the phones, it's, do you want to fund public fund higher education institutions? So we have free colleges and universities in Minnesota. That's not going to be feasible in the next couple of years. So my answer for that is no right now. There are some really great programs that we can work with and other ways to get student loan debt down. So the committee, like I said, is a finance and policy committee. So it's combined. So environment in the House, you have a separate committee for policy and finance. Higher education is combined in both the House and Senate. So in finance, you've got things like pilot programs. There was one that I worked on a little bit in the end of 2020 session. That was a pilot program for teacher candidates for career and technical colleges that they wanted to start down in Winona. So things like that fall under the finance piece. Tuition freezes, building projects, that kind of thing. Policy is everything to do with safety and health. So hunger on campus, sexual assault on campus, any kind of policy relating to sports, that kind of thing. And then you also have data and reporting. So the legislature is constantly asking for reports from different projects, or if we send some money out, we want to see that return. What does that look like? Hey, Molly, thanks for joining. So that's a big part in the policy discussion as well. And then regent selection. If you ask any staffer at the House or Senate about regent selection, you're going to get that face. It's a lot of work. So the regents at the University of Minnesota are who basically guides the funding and policy decisions. They are kind of like the board of trustees, and the legislature has appointing authority for those. So there's different terms, and they're up every so often, and we're going to have a couple up this next year. So you're getting all these candidates that come in and want to meet with every member of the House and Senate, and it's a long process, and a lot of people don't get it and don't get why it's so important. So that was quite the battle. We're prepping for that right now. It's a lot. It's a lot. Have community college and tech schools tuitions come down at all? 2 years ago, as a candidate, Governor Walz had a goal for this. Where is this at for students not intending on four-year colleges? Yeah, they... unfortunately, I don't think have come down a lot in the last couple of years. The governor was really strong in wanting us to put some effort and put some money and funding into that in 2019. The House actually came out with a stronger bill to put some funding behind those education pilot programs and helping to spread the CTE, the college or career and technical education opportunities, and help promote those, because 4-year is not affordable for a lot of folks. And those 2-year, career technical institutions are a really, really good second option. And I agree with the governor on that one. We absolutely need to keep promoting those and doing what we can to fund those and help with tuition and student loan grants and things like that. So unfortunately, we weren't able to get anything done because the Senate threw up roadblocks at every chance we got. So we weren't able to get a whole lot out of that bill. So that is something that I would love to work on going into next session in 2021. Yeah, definitely something I want to do. We were able to put a lot more money than we expected to behind the student or state grant program. So that's someone who's attending college in state that is from Minnesota. The whole legislature agreed that we need to really focus on students being here and staying here. So we do focus a lot on that, and the state grant program does that. So we were able to put a little bit more funding behind that. And one thing I'm super excited about was College Possible is a great program for first time, for like the first person in someone's family to go to college, helping them navigate, the aid situation and get to college and get through college. That's something that was really fun to work on and very rewarding to see. And then there's a self-loan refinance program through the Office of Higher Education as well. So they actually help students refinance their loans and try to get a more manageable, monthly payment and that kind of thing. Yeah, all the reason to flip the Senate. Yeah, for sure. Yep. Oh, yeah, we had a lot. We had a killer bill. I was so proud to work on that 2019 bill and the 2020 bill that we came out with. And our counterparts in the Senate it was shocking. They wanted to put a lot of money behind the workforce development programs, which are in concept wonderful, but in practice we're not seeing that return on investment. They're not effective. That was, development scholarships for people who are going into certain areas, so PCAs, transportation was one. So we did end up expanding those programs. They wanted a whole bunch more money to go to that rather than a tuition freeze or the state grant programs, which still blows my mind to this day. I'm not really sure why that was a thing. I have suspicions, but I don't know why that was necessary because the programs aren't super great, as is. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens with that next session. One thing also to work on that I wrote a whole list of stuff I really want to work on. So with the last 10 minutes, we'll get to that. And then I'll talk a little bit about our kind of how we got the bill done in 2020. So there's still yet to be worked on things that I want to push for. There's a teacher of color and American Indian teacher candidate program that was funded through the Office of Higher, or administered through the Office of Higher Education and funded by the state legislature. And that would increase the amount of teachers of color candidates that we could then, disperse along around the state. We know that the achievement gap in Minnesota is massive. And one huge contributing factor to that is lack of, diverse teacher candidates. Kids learn more effectively if they see someone in a position of power like that looks like them. So it was really disheartening to have this great program. We know it works. We know there's a need for it, and put it in the bill and then have the Senate take it out of the bill and just offer nothing, especially now this is more needed more than ever. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to continuing to push. Mental health. You guys know I'm a big mental health advocate, and expanding mental health services onto our college campuses is so necessary. I mean, it's crazy. The student to counselor ratio that we see in K-12 and higher education is insane. I mean, it's crazy. It's, 500-700 students per counselor. So you have kids that are reaching out for help, anxiety, depression, stress, whatever, and being told, it's a 3-month waiting list. Well, then it's going to be too late for a lot of those kids. So we've seen some really tragic things happen on campuses because of that. So there was a pilot program that I helped work on with Representative Pryor from Minnetonka, the vice chair of the higher ed committee. And it was to allow independent mental health professionals to establish an office on campus. So that's a win-win. So you're never mixing, medical and educational records. It's an independent business that's benefiting from having, clientele available. And, being able to operate on campus is a win for the college. They don't have to bring in somebody to do that job. They just allow someone to operate out of their campus. So definitely something that we could continue to push for and should continue to push for. It's something that is near and dear to my heart a lot. With, some people in my family have struggled with that a lot. Hunger-free campuses is another one. We were able to allow colleges and universities to apply for the hunger-free campus distinction, but we didn't fund any support for that. So you have, the U of M is a great example, Twin Cities campus. There are no grocery stores. Fresh Time is the only one, and that's really difficult to get to. So if a student doesn't have a car, they're not going to be able to get to a grocery store really easily. So that's something that we battled a lot with the Transportation Committee and with the Met Council and back and forth on how do we fix this. We can't compel a grocery store to be established there, but we can make it easier for our students to get to one that's already established. Eric, that's a great question. And I did write a note about that. Okay. Percentage of administration is the total budget. Is that a statistic like the state measures like charities? Yeah. So let me try to find, yeah. there's a lot. That's a really like juicy thing that the opposition likes to say. Well, the administration costs are insane. They're large, I'll say, but total budget, it's not a huge percentage. So the House and Senate both, the Senate had more of a problem with that than the House did, I will say, but the House and Senate both said, why don't we get a report from all of the colleges and universities and make them say, this is our percentage of our budget that we're paying this, this, and this, and here's what we're getting from it. So those continue to come in, and then nothing is ever discussed about it. So it's, to me, it's people cherry picking facts, or cherry picking a part of a fact that goes into, we can't give the colleges and universities any more money because they're using it on this. But if you look at it and look at the report, that's not the case, but that's not convenient to that narrative. So there are reports out there. I wish I could say right off the top of my head some numbers for you. But the conversation behind those doesn't happen. The Senate does have some hearings, oversight hearings, and they have done that in the last 2 years, but they've been pretty politically charged and not very fruitful, not productive. So yeah, and the other thing to keep in mind with that too, we had this battle with the provost at the U of M being hired, and one of the regents was very against the salary that they were going to be getting, and it was a significant cut from the surrounding areas, the rest of the Big Ten schools. So in order to recruit and maintain and retain the world-class education that you can get here at the U of M, at Mankato, wherever it might be, we need to be competitive. And part of that is recruiting and retaining, competitive staff and administrators and teachers and that kind of thing. So that's not necessarily a bad thing to have a well-paid, folks that are running the ship. That being said, there's certainly ways we can trim the fat. I get asked a lot, well, how are you going to pay for all this stuff? That's the classic response. How are you going to pay for it? So I always say two things. One is we need to open up new streams of revenue, like legalizing recreational marijuana and taxing it. The other is that we can trim the fat. And part of that I've been shocked to learn, is that, these mandates come out from the state legislature and they say, here's your money, or here's your policy that you have to follow. And it's an unfunded mandate I'm not a fan of. And here's your report that you have to submit to us. And that happens, and the reports come in, and sometimes conversations happen, sometimes they don't, they go unnoticed, and then nothing happens. So if that program that we're funding and we need a report on all of a sudden goes defunct or gets rolled into something else, or they can suddenly, finance it themselves, and we don't retract that report, we're still spending money on making sure that report gets done. We're still spending money on and staff hours on making sure that report gets done. And there's a lot of that. I was shocked to hear, to speak with the folks from in-state, from the state colleges and university system, and hear that that's a thing that's happening. So I think it's not a juicy, fun thing to go, speak about on the Senate floor, but it's something that we need to definitely look at and take advantage of. Sports gambling. Thank you. Sports betting as well. Yes, agree with you. Totally agree. That was something that we talked a little bit about, during the session that they went down to Winona. And it's in the works. It's in the works. It's slow. But yeah, something I want to definitely pursue as well. Like if maybe I'm just speaking from my personal experience, but if I'm running low on money, I go get another job. Which is why I've been a bartender for a while. Not currently, because I'm running, and this is like a full-time job that I don't get paid for. But you look for other opportunities to make money, and you look for ways you can cut. So we need to do both. So sports betting, legalizing recreational marijuana, things like that's your new revenue, right? That's your second job, and trimming the fat, right? That's your second available opportunity. All right, so back to things I want to work on in higher ed. Wraparound services. We know that students of all ages have a really difficult time learning if the rest of their life isn't in place. So if someone is sleeping in a tent under a bridge, they're probably not going to be the best student because they're exhausted. If someone's living out of their car, or they can't afford to eat, they're probably not going to be able to learn the way that they need to. Maybe they can't afford a textbook, that kind of thing. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll have to maybe bring on someone else to do a sports betting conversation with you guys, because I'm not the expert on it, but yeah, definitely something I want to pursue. We've got Canterbury right there. Anyway, So there are wraparound services that other states have done for students that need to be pursued here and definitely could be. We worked really hard on the textbook bill that Representative Wolgamott from St. Cloud carried, and we did get part of that through. So we're funding a pilot program for development of online textbooks that are free to students that need them. And anyone who's gone to school, I mean, my law school books were more than my tuition at some semesters. So yeah. The sexual assault response, that was like my baby of a bill that I worked on from start to finish, and we weren't able to finish it because COVID hit, and we weren't able to have the hearings that we needed to. But having a comprehensive sexual assault response across our state, so victims don't have different experiences at different campuses. That's something that definitely needs to be followed up on. And then one of my favorite bills that I worked on, one of the most conservative Republicans in the House happens to be a really fun person to talk to and work with. And he let me work with him on this bill to protect student data from being sold to third-party vendors. So if you get a key card and you can card into the library and your dorm and you use it for your healthcare and your food, all that data is stored and tracked, and there are some campuses or schools, not in Minnesota, but in our Big Ten Conference, that are selling those to third-party vendors for whatever reason, and we don't want that to happen here. So he is an IT guy, and I was able to help with that bill. Again, COVID hit, and we couldn't have a hearing for it, but I want to follow up with that. So we're protecting student data. We talked about relief from unnecessary reporting, and then having a student loan advocate. Representative Stevenson has a bill that for some reason the Senate again did not jump on and would not allow us to put it in the final bill on either year, to have a standard student loan advocate for students facing these insane predatory lenders, to help them navigate this process. Beats me as to why that wasn't something that the Senate wanted to put in there. So, I want to follow up with that too. So, got so good at seeking out cost-effective textbooks for my son when he was in college that I helped others do the same. Textbooks are way too expensive. Agreed, 1000%. It is crazy to have a book that is thousands of dollars. I mean, that's crazy. So it's not always, funding of a tuition freeze that helps our students. That, of course, would help, but there are other creative opportunities like what you're talking about, sourcing cost-effective textbooks, getting that textbook price down, making sure there's affordable housing, making sure there's adequate mental health and health care, and, wraparound services so our students are happy and safe. So it's not all about the money. It's also about the policy, too, and things like that definitely play into it. So we're going over time a little bit, but I think it's important to talk about my experience in dealing with negotiations. So you get a bill, House and Senate, they pass their bill, their higher education omnibus bill, right? Or whatever single topic that it should be. It could be smaller than just an omnibus bill, but you pass those bills, then you come together in conference committee and you work it out. Now, I've had 2 different experiences in 2 different years in 2 different roles. So I was a committee legislative assistant for 19, committee administrator for 20, but we were in COVID working remotely in the 20. So I have very different experiences, and I will say that I have uniquely, according to my coworkers, I had a really unique relationship with my counterpart in the Senate who was a Republican. We got along really well. And I still talk to her to this day, and her and I disagree on a lot, but we had a great relationship, and we were able to work through some things. There was a point in time, and this may get me in trouble at work, but I don't care. There was a point in time where negotiations had stalled. Both chairs didn't want to engage anymore, and they were done. And it was looking like, well, we weren't going to get a bill. We were not going to have a higher ed bill in 2020 because they were not interested. So the 2 of us got together and worked out, well, let's write this letter and let's, write this email, and you talk to your person, I'll talk to my person, and let's come together and see what we can do. So I did a lot of hard work in writing that letter and convincing my chair that I worked for to, let's relax on this thing and let's really focus on this thing instead. And just to get negotiations moving again. And that's a tactic that I learned in negotiation class in law school, was extending that olive branch. And, I'm sure you guys negotiate all the time, whether it's with your kids for dinner or whether it's buying a house or whatever. It's the very same thing. So having those relationships established ahead of time is super important. And I feel very confident in that I have that because we have a 2020 higher education bill because of that. I think that's really important. And then being able to work with people from all sides of the political coin, right? This woman and I, we don't agree on a whole lot of stuff, but we agreed enough to know that we needed to get this bill done. And there was a couple things that needed to be in there. So how do we get that done? So we were, both able to get our chairs to put aside, the party stuff and get to work on just a really clean bill. So there was just a couple pieces that were really tricky towards the end, very complicated stuff with the federal conformity piece. But we got it done and we got it across the finish line. And then it was easy to go back to our respective chambers, Senate and House, and say, this is the bill that we agreed on in conference committee. The Republicans agree, the Democrats agree, and here you go. And then vote and have it go through. So I got to learn a lot by doing that, being physically involved in every step of the way, from bill creation to working at the finance piece to negotiation to passing the bill, and wrote some pretty good speeches for folks to give as well. So I know that I can do this, and I very much plan to operate the same way when I'm elected as I have as a staffer, putting aside the party nonsense and really just getting to work and getting good policy out there. By getting people to believe in the vision and buy into what you're doing is important. You can't just go in there and say, I'm only going to vote this and I'm not going to waver on anything. Well, you're not going to get anything done. So, you might be able to bully some people and push some things through, but that's not effective. And that's not what our elected officials should be doing. So not what I plan to do. And I really hope that I can continue to work on higher education stuff because I'm very passionate about it. So I could talk about this for hours, but it's already 6 minutes over. So I'm going to let you guys go enjoy the rest of your day. But if you have any further questions or suggestions or anything like that, please let me know. You can message me on here. You can email me, go on the website, submit a question through there. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. What am I forgetting? Yeah, email, phone call, anything. Let me know. I'm really happy to keep having these conversations. And I will say, I feel like we are, despite this being an election season and a really important and about to get real nasty election season, it's important that we are still having these conversations with our friends and neighbors and community. And I feel really fortunate and thankful that I get to do that right now, and that our volunteers are helping as well. Telephone event. Yes. Oh, Molly, you missed the beginning of it. We are having a phone call or a phone bank today from 4 to 6. So if you're interested, email me at addie@addie4mn.com, or you can sign up and just say going on the Facebook event, and I can message you all the details. So we'll hop on a Zoom call and we'll have fun. We'll get some phone calls going. So yeah, I just want to leave you guys with this. These conversations are important. These are really, really important. And we are changing the narrative out here. We're having conversations in Minnesota and in Carver County that we have never had in my 32 years of living here. That's a win. That's a win right there. Being able to put aside differences and have conversations on how we are going to move forward and get out of this pandemic as safely and wholly as we possibly can. That's huge. That's really cool. So thank you for participating in that with me. And I'm very excited to continue having those conversations. So, all right. Next week, we will have, I'm very excited. You guys know that I got into politics because of healthcare, and I have a lot of passion around this and a lot to learn as well. So we are having 2 of the 4 doctors in the current legislature join us for our town hall next week. So we have Representative Kelly Morrison from District 33, just next door in Chanhassen, Excelsior area. And then we have Senator Matt Klein, who is an emergency room doctor, and Dr. Kelly Morrison is a doctor as well. So I'm going to have a lot of questions for them. So if you guys have questions for them too, please go ahead and submit those through the website, and I'll make sure those get asked as well. And we'll have a great conversation about the future of healthcare in our state. All right. Thanks so much. Everyone have a great rest of your long weekend. Rest up and then hit the ground running on Tuesday for the home stretch of this election. All right. Take care, everyone.